Tentacle Nation, what if the truth you deserve is hidden behind locked doors? Today, we're peeling back the layers of secrecy surrounding a document that should have been easy to access. Welcome back to the infamous ex-chief. This episode is unlike any other. I have filed through the Ohio Court of Claims for the official autopsy report of Christion Olson. Yet the Medina County Coroner's Office has been reluctant to release it, citing an ongoing investigation. This reluctance raises serious concerns, as Ohio law mandates that autopsy reports are public record. Based on my understanding, withholding this information could be a violation of that law. The document I have in my possession has not been officially verified, but comes from a highly reliable source. It is my belief that pressure needs to continue to be applied to bring the Olson family closure. Today, we're diving into its details, breaking it down for clarity, and discussing why transparency is crucial in cases like these. Let's get started. First, let's talk about what an autopsy actually is. An autopsy is like a detective's investigation. When someone dies, especially in an unusual circumstance, a medical examiner looks at their body to figure out what happened. Think of it like a mechanic looking under the hood of a car that suddenly stopped running. They're checking all the parts to figure out what went wrong. In this case, the autopsy was performed by Dr. Cynthia Lawson at the Cuyahoga County Medical Examiner's Office. Now, everyone here knows that I'm not a fan of the politics in Cuyahoga County, but I have to say the Cuyahoga County Medical Examiner's Office is Tier 1, top-notch. They handle their cases with professionalism and expertise. You might be wondering why Medina County didn't perform the autopsy themselves. Smaller medical examiners or coroner's offices, like Medina County, often only have a budget for a certain number of autopsies a year. Alternatively, they might feel that they don't have the necessary expertise for complex cases, or there could be concerns about a potential conflict of interest. Now, I have no evidence to suggest any of these reasons specifically apply to this case, but these are common factors in why smaller counties might turn to a larger office like Cuyahoga County's medical examiner. So let's cue up the report here. The report says Christion died from blunt force trauma. So what does that mean? Simply put, it's when something hits or crushes the body without cutting it open. Let's go on through the injuries one by one. Abrasions, which are also just commonly scrapes. Think about falling off your bike and scraping your knee. That's an abrasion. Christion had scrapes on his arms and legs. These could happen if someone was thrown or dragged on a rough surface. These types of abrasions could happen in a fall, but they are not definitive evidence of one. Christion was found on someone's property, so these abrasions could also result from being dragged across concrete, gravel, or rough surfaces, possibly during an impact or assault. Next, we have listed bruises, contusions. Bruises happen when blood vessels break under the skin. Christion had bruises on his face, neck, chest, and right arm. While bruises can occur in a fall, the distribution on multiple areas of the body, particularly the neck and chest, suggest a more direct impact rather than just a single fall. For someone found on private property, these might suggest being struck repeatedly by a hard object or experiencing significant force from an external source. Next, we have, I want to make sure we're queued up here on the correct section of the report here. Next, we have muscle and tissue damage. The report mentions injuries to muscles in Christion's neck, chest, and shoulder. Imagine hitting your arm so hard that it hurts deep inside. That's muscle contusion. These injuries suggest strong impacts. Falls can sometimes cause muscle damage, but the specific areas affected here indicate significant force directed at these parts of the body. This pattern could align with being pushed or struck against a hard surface, like a sidewalk, driveway, or another solid structure on someone's property. Let's talk about the fractures. So we have fractures, which are broken bones. Christion had a broken collarbone and 2 broken ribs. These types of injuries take significant force. For example, the collarbone might break if someone falls hard on their shoulder or is hit directly. However, the combination of broken ribs and a fractured collarbone makes it less likely to be solely from a fall, unless it was from a great height or onto a particularly hard surface. For someone found, as Christion was found, this could suggest being struck by an object or being thrown against a hard structure like a wall, driveway, or pavement. Now, he has lung and chest injuries. This report also describes serious lung injuries. One lung was torn, causing something called a pneumothorax, which means air escaped into chest cavity. Imagine popping a balloon and the air rushing out. At the same time, his chest filled with blood. According to the report, about 1.5 liters, which is like 3 big, large water bottles. This made it almost impossible for him to breathe. These kinds of injuries are unlikely from a simple fall. A torn lung and significant chest bleeding typically results from either high-energy impacts, such as those seen in car crashes, or crushing injuries, rather than falls from a standing height. For someone found as Christion was found, these injuries could point to being struck with force or thrown against a hard, solid object like the ground or wall. The liver is an organ in your belly that helps clean your blood. Christion's liver was torn, which can cause a lot of internal bleeding. This might happen if someone's hit hard in the stomach or falls onto something sharp. Falls from great heights might cause such an injury, but they're not consistent with a lower impact incident. For someone found, as Christion was found, it might suggest a direct blow to the abdomen, such as from a hard object or sharp impact from the environment. He also had blood spots in the eyes. The report mentions petechia, which are tiny red dots in the eyes. These can happen when there's extreme pressure on the neck or chest, like being choked or compressed. This is not a typical result of a fall and points more toward external pressure of force. For someone found, as Christion was found, this could suggest manual compression of the neck or other forms of physical assault. So, what does all this mean? The medical examiner concluded that Christion's cause of death was blunt force trauma to the neck and trunk. Let's look at the report here. Right here. That means the middle part of his body was hit or crushed so badly that his organs and bones couldn't function. When we put all the injuries together, abrasions, bruises, muscle and tissue damage, fractures, lung and chest trauma, liver damage, and the bloody spots in the eye, we can see the severity and the extent of the trauma. These injuries weren't isolated. They all tell a story of significant high-energy impacts directed at multiple parts of his body. For investigators, this pattern is key to understand what happened. It rules out simple accidents like a fall, and instead suggests a series of events involving considerable force or multiple impacts. It's important to remember that the autopsy tells us what injuries happen, but doesn't always explain how they happened. That's where the investigators come in. Now, there's a lot of ways that these injuries could have happened, but let's think about what might have caused these injuries in some more realistic scenarios. So let's talk about a car crash. What if Christion was struck by a car? This could explain some of the injuries observed. For instance, abrasions, bruises might result from contact with the bumper or being dragged along the ground. The fractures to the ribs and collarbone might occur if the upper body hit the hood or windshield. However, the liver injury raises questions. Liver trauma typically suggests direct, forceful impact to the abdomen, which is less common in a pedestrian vehicle collision unless there was a secondary impact with a hard object on the ground. While it's plausible, this scenario doesn't fully align with all the observed injuries and requires further investigation. So you have physical assault. The injuries could also be consistent with a violent physical assault. Multiple strong impacts to the body, such as being struck with a heavy object or thrown against hard surfaces, could explain the fractures, bruises, muscle damage, and the small breaking in the eye. The liver injury is especially notable here, as it often results from a concentrated blow to the abdomen. The pattern of injuries suggests a sustained forceful attack rather than a single event. Now, fall from a height. If someone falls from a significant height, say off a roof or down a flight of stairs, they could land with enough force to cause the injuries described. However, the specific bruising patterns and the little eye ruptures again observed here make a fall less likely as the sole cause. Now let's shift to the toxicology findings, which play an important role in piecing together the events leading to Christion's tragic death. The toxicology report analyzes samples of blood, urine, and other tissues for substances that might affect the interpretation of what happened. In Christion's case, the toxicology findings indicated the presence of nicotine and its metabolite in the urine. This shows recent tobacco use, but it's not particularly relevant to the cause of death. Importantly, there was no alcohol, volatiles, or any other substance found in his system that might have impaired the judgment or contributed to his injuries. Now, there was some indication of some delta 9 THC. It showed positive, but again, may have caused slight impairment, but it's again not going to contribute to the injuries that were listed. Now that we've examined both the physical injuries and the toxicology findings, let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Christion's autopsy paints a clear story of severe external trauma. The injuries, abrasions, bruises, muscle damage, fractures, internal organ trauma are consistent with a high-energy physical event. These were not caused by substances in the system, but by direct external forces. The toxicology findings provide context, but do not shift the narrative. While the delta 9 THC suggests a recent marijuana use, there's no evidence that it impaired him to the point of contributing to his death. Nicotine use is noted, but irrelevant in context. This leaves us with a focus on the physical evidence and external factors surrounding his injuries. So where does that leave us? The injuries and toxicology combined tell us that Christion likely experienced a violent series of events. The next step is to look deeper into the circumstances of his death, the scene where he was found, and any witnesses or evidence that can piece together what happened. Transparency and continued investigation are crucial to bringing the Olson family the justice they deserve. These findings, when considered alongside the physical injuries, reinforce the conclusion that external physical violence, not substance-related factors, led to Christion's death. The absence of impairing substances shifts the investigative focus entirely to the physical evidence and the sequence of events surrounding his fatal injuries. Physical assault, a scenario where someone is struck multiple times or thrown against hard surfaces, could explain the widespread injuries. For example, being hit with a heavy object or repeatedly pushed into a wall or the ground could account for the fractures, tissue damage, and the broken vessels in the eye. We're not saying any of this definitively happened, just that they're possible based on the injuries. The patterns point to a violent series of events rather than an isolated accident. There's a lot of speculation surrounding cases like this, so let's address a few myths and clarify the facts. Myth: the autopsy conclusively proves whether Christion was attacked. Fact: the autopsy documents the injuries and toxicology findings, but does not confirm how or why those injuries occurred. It's a piece of the puzzle, not the full picture. Myth: the injuries could only result from a single event, like a fall or car accident. Fact: the injuries suggest multiple impacts or high-energy event. While individual scenarios such as being struck by a car have some merit, they don't fully explain all the findings, particularly the liver injury and the broken blood vessels in the eye. The report gives us clues, but it's not the final word. Investigators must piece together the physical evidence, toxicology findings, and witness accounts to uncover the full truth. So that's the truth behind the report. We've walked through the injuries, what they mean, and how they might have happened. This document gives us the what, but not always the how or why. That's for investigators to figure out. We need justice for the Olson family. If anyone has information about what happened to Christion, please contact the Cuyahoga County Crime Stoppers. Your tip could make the difference. Be sure to check out the other episodes I've done on Christion's homicide to get more context and stay informed. Hit the like button, subscribe, share this video to help spread the Christion Olson's story. Together, we can keep pushing for transparency and justice. I do have an outro that I want to make. Before my outro, I didn't want to interfere with this segment, but I do want to say one last thing about this before we move on to the outro. I did attempt to email the Medina County Prosecutor's Office relative to this report that I had received. In full disclosure, I advised them that I had received this report. I thought that it might prompt them to do the right thing and release the report. It has not. I just wanted to basically take a second and make everybody aware that I did attempt to email them and tell them that I was planning on putting this or using this report that I received, and again, it's from a very reliable source. Stay tuned for my outro. It has nothing to do with this Olson, more to do with the show. Be back in a second. Hey everyone, I appreciate you everybody sticking around. If you're new to the channel, please feel free to again hit subscribe. Get this message out relative to Christian's homicide. So I'm here as the infamous ex-chief here with a big update. After a lot of thought and feedback from you all, I've decided to officially transition the name of our show from the Tentacles of Cuyahoga County to the infamous ex-chief. So why the change? I'm glad you asked. While the Tentacles of Cuyahoga County was a meaningful title to me, I've realized over the time that many didn't fully understand its significance. It was meant to highlight how deep and interconnected the issues of justice, corruption, and reform are in Cuyahoga County. But I've learned that the name wasn't as clear as I hoped, and for some, it even created confusion. The infamous ex-chief, on the other hand, is personal, direct, and reflects the heart of our mission: to expose injustice, spotlight reform, and have those tough conversations that others shy away from. It's a title that embodies who I am and what this show is all about. So, for the next few weeks, you'll see both names being used as we make the transition. Don't worry, the content you love isn't going anywhere. We're still pro-police while holding the bad actors in the justice system accountable. And we'll continue calling out the misconduct that hurts us all. Thank you for being on the journey with me and for supporting the show. I'm excited for what's ahead. As the infamous ex-chief, let's keep building something powerful together. Stay tuned, and as always, keep those tentacles reaching for the truth. And again, feel free to link back to the previously aired episodes on the Christian case to make certain that you are fully up to date.